All right there, everyone. Some good news this morning. Anti-feminism has officially become more popular than feminism. That's what we're talking about on today's video. And we'll also be looking at why feminism has always been doomed to fail and why it's an utterly futile belief system that has no future. But first, a huge welcome to all of you, especially our first-time viewers. I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events in light of some awesome conservative trends so that you can live your values, impact lives, and change the world. So if you would, please smack that bell and subscribe button. It'll be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel and our online community. All right, some findings from a British survey have been getting a lot of press of late, largely because these findings are so at odds with what our globalist elite, particularly our political elite, our Hollywood elite, have been pushing on us for the last several years, the last year or two particularly. I'm talking about a survey that was conducted by YouGov earlier this year that found that 33% of people between the ages of 18 and 24 agreed with the statement that feminism is to blame for making some men feel marginalized and demonized in society. It's a pretty strong statement. But when the ultra-liberal BuzzFeed got a hold of these stats, it saw this as an indicator of why so many young people, particularly in Europe, are turning to the dangerous and horrible far right, right? And this was the analysis of BuzzFeed. Indeed, they're not alone. The organization Hope Not Hate commissioned the study originally to see how influential feminism has become, particularly in British society. After all, if you think it through, everywhere we look today, feminism is making another victory lap among our elites, whether it's with the feminism that pervades the new Terminator movie or turning James Bond into a woman, or the squad of the 4 new congresswomen, the ultra-left congresswomen over here in the States. Everywhere we look, feminism is being pushed on us. And yet, these organizers for Hope Not Hate were frankly shocked to find that a third of young people think feminism is a bunch of bunk. And it got even worse, actually, with men in general. 42% of British men felt that feminism was marginalizing and demeaning men. And when they broke the study down along political lines, again, it's a British study, they found that nearly 50% of Tory members believe feminism has a negative impact on society, while only a quarter of those Tory members believed it had a positive impact. Now, this wasn't just a fly-by-night poll, some kind of snap poll. This was a survey of more than 6,000 adults. It was a pretty impressive sampling, and it appears to be quite accurate of general sentiments. And liberal groups recognize it as such. They see this as devastating to the notion that the world is becoming more and more progressive, as they keep telling us. In fact, Hope Not Hate and BuzzFeed are interpreting these results as evidence that Europe is actually becoming more and more, in their words, far right or radical right. And do you know who they blame for this? YouTube. They're blaming YouTube. They're blaming YouTube because of a New York Times study that asserted that the algorithm for YouTube put increasingly extreme videos in its suggested viewing. I actually read this study, the so-called study, some time back. And it argued that no matter what subject you were searching for in YouTube, if you waited around long enough and eventually the suggested videos always brought you to videos featuring the far radical racist right. So YouTube is radicalizing our youth. Well, I think there's something much deeper going on here than YouTube and its algorithm. This study is but the latest in a series of studies that show how feminism is becoming increasingly less and less popular with every passing year. Brandon Morse over at redstate.com noted that a recent survey conducted by the BBC found that only 1 in 5 women in the UK and the United States identify as feminists. Now, I think that's only partly interesting. What would have been really interesting is that the BBC contrasted those figures with a comparable survey of our political and Hollywood elite. What percentage of BBC reporters and Hollywood actresses consider themselves feminists? I'd estimate it to be upwards around 90%, right? I'm guessing. Which, of course, exposes the radical discrepancy between the populace, the sentiments of the people, and our governing cultural Marxist elite, which in turn would help explain why so many of us in the populace want nothing to do with the cosmopolitan progressive values of the decadent elite that are nevertheless shoved down our throats through what passes off as politics and entertainment today. But if we dive even deeper here, we'll notice that scholars, and these are particularly demographers, okay, and those, I'm speaking of demographers who are honest or willing to really think through the implications of the demographic data. They've noticed for some time now that there is an inherent futility in feminism, okay? There is a radical flaw, a contradiction entailed in the feminist worldview. And I'm particularly appreciative of the work of the demographer Philip Longman on this, as well as Eric Kaufman. The contradiction inherent in feminism is the inconvenient fact that feminist and countercultural movements of the 60s and 70s that have been so up in arms against patriarchy and traditional gender roles in the family and the like, right? While feminists are all up in arms against the traditional family, in the process, they are not leaving any genetic legacy. You see, while patriarchy may have its modern-day contemporary critics, its feminist, postmodern, cultural Marxist critics, whatever else you want to say about patriarchy and the traditional family, as demographers like Longman have pointed out, the simple fact is no advanced civilization has yet learned how to endure without it. You can beat up patriarchy and the traditional family values all you want, but we have yet to encounter another way of effectively reproducing the human population without traditional values. And that's what feminists are now discovering, to their horror. Their war against the family has resulted in their own failure to leave any genetic legacy. So feminists are basically disappearing off the face of the earth. This is what I like to call the futility of feminism. For example, Longman cites a very interesting statistic. While only 11% of baby boomer women had 4 or more children, okay? Only 11% had 4 or more children. Those children made up over 25% of the total children born to baby boomers. So 11% of women are having 25% of the children. And that's because so many of their secular counterparts had only 1 child or none at all. Again, conversely, the 20% of baby boomer women who had only 1 child, they accounted for a mere 7% of the total children born to baby boomers. In another statistic, this one from France, Longman found that 30% of French women are responsible for over 50% of all French births. And again, this is because their secular counterparts are having either only 1 child or none at all. The simple fact of the matter is that you can't wage a war against the traditional family and expect to win that war over the long haul. Eventually, whether you like it or not, eventually, those who embrace the traditional family, those who embrace traditions that perpetuate human civilization are always going to outlast you. And now with these surveys, we're starting to see the consequences of this feminist futility. Now, speaking of the consequences of feminist futility, we just posted a video analyzing the disarray within the Democratic Party, where feminists are now actually starting to turn on each other. It's just amazing. So make sure to click on the video, Democrat Disarray, and you'll discover the political fallout of this feminist futility. I'll see you over there. God bless.